I'm very excited to be here. As you can hear, I'm not from here, but I have been living in Boulder for 8 years, and I really feel like I belong. And I'm very excited to work with the city of Boulder through the visit here, but also with you guys. I mean, we are getting into a very good connection. I just want to share a couple of thoughts with you. First, I want to start with my own experience with the floods. The flood, I mean, my basement was flooded. And one of my stepsons came to my room and said, "Paty, water is coming from the basement." And I went down, you know. And then, you know that the first thing I did was to get some towels and try to prevent the water from coming. And nothing happened. That was the most stupid thing I could have done. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, Paty, aren't you an expert on this? And then, of course, I answered to myself, yes. So the second thing I did was to start thinking, okay, what you do? And then it was there when I started to think, okay, I need to go and see my neighbors, I need to talk to them, see how they are doing. Given that I am a foreigner who is faced with the fact that Mexico City is always flooded, but in a different way, I really need to say. I said, okay, so go get your neighbors, ask them what they are doing, see how you solve this problem, who you need to contact, etc., etc. So then I started to use my knowledge, right, being an always flooded person from Mexico City. But the first point I want to share with you is that based on that experience and based on the knowledge I have from other cases, the first thing that came to my mind is that many of us were not even expecting something like this. That was not part of our mindset. And that happens a lot. So, and that brings me to another point I want to make. I really like what Marcus was saying and how he was setting the stage, because sometimes when we think about what is the solution to these problems, we get the question wrong. There is no one solution. There are multiple elements we need to consider. You were referring to infrastructures, right? I mean, let me start, and this will be based on my knowledge of one of the Latin American cities I have been working on, Buenos Aires. I mean, we need to be very aware of the fact that we are agents. We always try to do something to see how we get our hands around things, right? And that's a key element I would agree with you, we don't know a lot about how people responded to these floods. I mean, we need to collect more data and be more systematic about that. From my experience in my neighborhood, there were people who waited 3 days and were thinking, well, what do I do to remove the water from my basement? There were others like me that immediately said, no, I cannot even think about the idea of having water in my basement. I need to do whatever I can to solve the problem. So there are lots of options there. And those are not only individual actions, but also how do we relate with the neighbor, with the family, with whoever to solve problems. So there are different layers of actions that relate to what Giddens calls our different roles in society, right? We are the family members, we are the professionals, and we belong to different associations. So that's one level of analysis, of reflection we need to keep in mind. The other is infrastructures and built environment. How were our houses designed or not? And this brings me to a second example. My house got a little flooded, like this much of water. My neighbor, and I didn't have a sump pump. I noticed that. I thought we did, but we didn't. Okay, just for you to see. And I thought I was an expert on this. So, my neighbor did have a sump pump, but the design of her house was such that all what she was getting out was coming back to where the sump pump was working. Meaning, pay attention to the design of the house, to these little channels, little things, right, that you have around your house. Where is your house located? topography, that's the built environment and the infrastructures. For people in coastal areas, and also here, do we have a levee, something that protects us from bigger events, which brings us also to the global conversation on, do we need hard infrastructures or things that can be destroyed quickly or not? That's the second element. The third element we need to pay attention to is governmental, public responses. How do we come together as a collective and solve a problem? And here I want just to refer to the example of New Orleans and Katrina. One thing we learned from analyzing that example was that the government decided that just by providing information to people, they could immediately know what to do, get the car, go out. They forgot that some people do not have access to cars, or were thinking of their family members. Many elderly didn't want to move, etc., etc. So we need a system in place that prepares us for whatever contingency we will be faced with. And we will be faced with more of these extreme events. So public elements, public policies also matter. And I could go forever and ad nauseum with more ideas, but the bottom line is that we as a community that really care, and Boulder really cares, have everything to think of this experience as a catalyst for us to develop a series of actions, collective and individual actions, that allow us to respond to more and more events we will have according to the studies on climate change I am involved in. So with this, I leave it to the others. Thank you.